The waitress fled into a black sedan, not knowing it was the mafia boss's personal car. The rain wasn't just rain, it was an assault. It hit the graveyard shift windows of the Harbor Light Diner with a sound like thrown gravel. Fishtown, Philadelphia, always smelled of the river at this hour, 3 in the morning, a mix of rust, old water, and the metallic bite of the refineries over in Jersey. The air was thick with it, heavy as a wet blanket. Inside, I just smelled like burnt coffee and industrial bleach. My name is Lila Moreno. I'm the girl who fills your cup before you know it's empty, the one you don't look at twice. 24, but feeling closer to 40, skinny, tired, with paint from my afternoon job still clinging under my fingernails, no matter how hard I scrubbed. The Harbor Light was my penance, the place I paid for existing. They came in at 2:45, 2 men in windbreakers that screamed Federal, Interstate Integrity Bureau, IIB. They slid into booth 4, the one with the cracked red vinyl that always squeaked, but they were wrong. The eagle on the shoulder patch was stitched just a little too high, the yellow thread too bright. They didn't look like cops. They looked like hammers looking for a nail. I was wiping the chrome edging of the counter, close enough to hear, pretending to be invisible. "The shipment hits the pier at dawn," the beefy one said, his voice a low rasp that fought the hiss of the rain. "The witness from the diner needs to be cleaned up before then. No loose ends." My blood turned to ice water. My hands stopped moving. "And the cargo?" the thin one asked, tapping a rhythm on the tabletop. "Container QA774, the beefy one grunted. "Pier Mason 6. It gets moved before the real shift clocks in." The witness from the diner. My heart tripped. I was the only one on shift, the only witness. I didn't know what I'd seen, but they had already tried and convicted me. The thin one looked up. His eyes weren't cop eyes, they were dead, flat, like 2 dull coins. He saw me frozen. He saw I'd heard. "You," he hissed, sliding out of the booth, his movements sudden and violent. "Waitress, your phone, now." My hand was already on the fresh pot of high octane I'd just brewed. My brain split in 2. One half screamed run, the other was calculating the distance to the door, the weight of the pot, the heat of the coffee. "My phone, it's in my locker, sir," I lied, my voice shaking. "Don't lie to me." He grabbed my wrist, his grip a steel trap. "Give me the phone." He was dragging me over the counter. The beefy one was getting up, reaching inside his jacket. I did the only thing I could. I relaxed my grip on the glass pot. It shattered on the linoleum, an explosion of black coffee and scalding steam. He yelled, a sharp, angry sound, jumping back as the heat hit his legs. It wasn't enough time to run, but it was enough time to act. On the edge of their table, next to a pile of sugar packets, was a greasy delivery manifest, the slip they'd been looking at. While he was swatting at his pants, I didn't run for the door. I lunged forward, my hand shot out, grabbing that oily piece of paper. QA 774 Pier Mason 6. The words burned into my memory. Then I ran. I hit the emergency bar on the diner door and burst into the night. The rain was a physical blow, cold and instant, plastering my thin uniform to my skin in a second. "Get her!" The shout was muffled by the glass, but the rage was clear. My sneakers slapped the broken asphalt of the parking lot. The only light came from a cycling traffic signal at the corner, washing the street in pulsing red, then black, then red again. It felt like the whole world was bleeding out. I heard their car door slam. An engine roared, too loud for a cop car. I scanned the lot. My rusted-out Civic was parked 3 blocks away. I'd never make it. But there, idling silently by the curb, 50 feet away, was a black sedan, long, expensive, and dark as a shark's eye. Just as I reached it, the door of the building beside it, the Black Flag Club, the windowless diplomatic hub of the waterfront underworld, opened. A man stepped out. He was framed for a second in the dim amber light from the doorway. Immaculate suit, dark hair slicked back, Mateo Vale. Even waitresses in Fishtown knew that name, the man who owned the Delaware River, the man who made problems and people disappear. The press called him a logistics magnate. The street called him the cleaner. He was walking toward the driver's side. The fake Fed's SUV was turning the corner, its high beams flashing, pinning me. I had no choice. I yanked the back handle of the sedan. The door opened with a heavy, expensive thunk. I threw myself inside, landing hard on the plush leather floor mats, and pulled the door shut just as the SUV squealed to a stop behind us. I huddled in the dark, my heart trying to break out of my chest. The car smelled like rich leather, expensive cologne, and something cold, gunmetal. The driver's door opened. Mateo Vale slid in. He moved with an economy I'd never seen. No wasted motion. He didn't turn the key. The car was already running. He just sat perfectly still. For one long second, he was listening. He knew. He must have heard the desperate rasp of air I'd sucked in. In one fluid movement, he drew a black pistol from under his jacket. It had a thick cylinder on the end. He turned, aiming it directly at the back seat where I was coiled. Click! The cabin light flashed on, blinding me. His eyes found me instantly. They were darker than the river, and they saw everything. He wasn't just a suit. He was a king in his own dark kingdom. I had just jumped from the frying pan into the pressurized core of a volcano. "Don't kill me!" The words ripped out of my throat. I shoved the greasy paper at him, my hand shaking so hard it looked blurry. "Please, don't kill me!" His eyes didn't move from mine, but I saw his focus shift. He was calculating. He was reading me. "They were fake," I babbled, the words tumbling out, tripping over each other. In the diner, they had IB jackets, but they were fake. "They're gonna kill me. They talked about a shipment, Pier Mason 6. They said to clean the witness." He didn't lower the gun. He just watched me. He looked at my hands, shaking violently. He looked at the greasy, chipped nail polish on my fingers. He looked at the terror in my eyes, and I think he saw something else, too. He saw I wasn't lying. He saw I wasn't broken, just terrified. His gaze was heavy, analytic. It was the most terrifying and, strangely, the safest I'd felt in my life. He lowered the pistol, but not by much. With his left hand, he tapped the steering wheel. 3 sharp, precise raps, a code. "They'll kill me," I whispered, tears finally breaking free, cutting trails through the diner grime on my face. Outside, the SUV's high beams flooded the car. A door slammed. They were coming. Mateo Vale didn't hesitate. He didn't check his mirrors. He slammed the sedan into gear. The engine didn't roar. It snarled, a deep predator's sound. He cranked the wheel, the tires screaming as he mounted the curb, bypassing the men who were walking toward us. We rocketed onto Delaware Avenue, the rain hitting the windshield like bullets. I was thrown against the door, gasping. The smell of my own uniform, acrid with burnt coffee, filled the small space. He drove with one hand, his focus absolute, checking the mirrors as the SUV fell further and further behind, its engine no match for whatever beast he was driving. After 5 blocks of impossible speed, he took a hard right into a dark alley, cut the engine, and we were plunged into silence, broken only by the drumming rain and my own ragged breathing. He reached into the glove box and pulled out a linen handkerchief, tossing it into the back. "Wipe your face," and he said. His voice was calm, like gravel wrapped in velvet. I did, the fabric surprisingly soft. "You just picked the right car to survive," Mateo Vale said, his eyes finding mine in the rearview mirror. He turned back and picked up the oily slip I had dropped on the passenger seat. He studied the soaked, ruined paper under the faint glow of the dashboard. Most of the ink was a gray smear, but at the bottom, a signature in waterproof ink remained. A stylized, sharp signature. Quartz. I didn't know the name, but the way Mateo Vale's jaw tightened, the way his grip constricted on the steering wheel, told me he did. He knew exactly whose party I had just crashed. I had just brought the Marrow Syndicate, the ghosts who moved fake pharmaceuticals up and down the coast, right to his doorstep. The drive was silent. Mateo Vale handled the sedan with an unsettling stillness, cutting through the rain-slicked industrial guts of the city. He didn't speak, and I didn't dare breathe too loudly. We passed no landmarks I recognized, just endless fences topped with razor wire and brick facades weeping black streaks of mildew. He pulled into a blind alley that looked like a dead end, but a sheet of corrugated steel, indistinguishable from the rest of the fence, rolled back with a silent, hydraulic hiss. We drove into the earth. It was a concrete tunnel that opened into a vast, cavernous space. This was the Vale House. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress, carved from the bones of an old red brick textile mill. The instant the sedan's engine cut, the silence was absolute. The interior was a shocking mix of 19th century iron pillars and 21st century technology. Glass-walled offices sat like aquariums in the vast, open space, all glowing with the cool blue light of high-end computer monitors. A woman was waiting for us as we stepped out of the car. She was perhaps in her late 50s, with iron gray hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She wore a simple black dress, a headset, and an expression of severe impatience. She held a small, black device that looked like a television remote. "She's a stray. Matteo," the woman's voice was sharp, like static. "She's a complication, Vera," Matteo replied, his voice echoing slightly in the huge space. "Sweep her." The woman, Vera, gave me a look that could freeze water. She walked a slow circle around me, holding the device up, scanning me from head to toe. The device let out a soft, single beep. "She's clean of transmitters," Vera announced, as if she were disappointed. "But she's covered in burnt coffee and desperation. Bring her to the slab." The slab was a conference room, dominated by a single piece of polished black granite that served as a table. Rook Navarro, the man Matteo had signaled in the car, was already there, and he was a mountain of a man, with a face that looked like it had been in a losing argument with a propeller. He was typing furiously on a ruggedized laptop. Matteo Vale sat at the head of the table. He didn't invite me to sit. I stood, dripping onto the pristine floor. "Start from the beginning," Matteo commanded. "Why were they fake?" The authority in his voice snapped me to attention. The fear receded, replaced by a cold, sharp adrenaline. I had to prove I was worth the trouble I'd caused. "The real IUB doesn't work the piers," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "They don't do graveyard patrols at Pier Mason. They handle customs processing, and only after the Port Authority clears a shipment, not before." Rook stopped typing. His gaze flicked up to me. "The patch," I continued, remembering the flash of yellow thread, the logo on the windbreaker. It was an eagle, but the stitching was too thick. The wings were uneven. It was a bad knockoff. Matteo nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on me. "What else?" "One of them took a call, the thin one. He said he was running the stop for the Harbor and Transit Compliance Authority, the HTCA. "I've never heard of it," Rook grunted. "That's because it doesn't exist," I said. "I looked up all the city and port agencies 2 weeks ago. My manager at the diner wanted to fight a zoning citation. There is no HTCA. Matteo leaned back, a dark look passing over his features. He glanced at the greasy, water-damaged manifest slip that Vera had placed on the table. "They aren't just rogue agents," Matteo concluded, his voice low. "They're a phantom crew. They're using the color of federal authority to move something big." He tapped the slip. "Something disguised as vitamin powder." "Opioids," Rook said, the word landing on the table with a heavy thud. "The new synthetics. They're flooding the coast, but no one's been able to pin the entry point." "This is it," Matteo said. "Atlantic Beacon Freight." He looked at Rook. Rook was already typing again. His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Container QA774, logged by Atlantic Beacon Freight. It's scheduled for pickup at 4:10 a.m. tomorrow morning, or..." He checked his watch. "In about 40 minutes. He kept digging. Atlantic Beacon is a shell company, registered in Delaware. Its parent company is registered in Panama. It's a ghost. It's a cutout for Quartz. The name hung in the air again. Quartz. The signature on the slip. Matteo Vale turned his full, undivided attention to me. It felt less like being looked at and more like being scanned, analyzed, and weighed. "Lila Moreno," he said. My stomach twisted. He knew my name. Of course he did. "You have a problem. You saw their faces. You stole their manifest. They will not stop looking for you until you are erased." "I know," I whispered, the cold reality settling over me. "I am offering you a solution," he said. "I will provide protection. This building, my people. You will be safe. But safety has a price. It is not a gift, it is a transaction." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "In exchange, I want everything in your head. I want every face that's walked into that diner in the last 6 months. I want to know who tipped too heavily, who drank too much coffee, who looked nervous. I want to know if you have ever heard the name Quartz spoken aloud." I closed my eyes, forcing myself back into the diner. The endless parade of tired faces, the truckers, the dock workers, the night shift nurses, the smell of bacon, the squeak of the vinyl booths. It was a blur. Quartz, Quartz. The word wasn't a name, it was an object. My eyes snapped open. Dorian Cade. Even Rook paused, his thick fingers hovering over the keys. Mateo's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "Cade the philanthropist," Rook scoffed. "He's cleaner than the mayor." "He comes in twice a week," I said, the memory clear and sharp. "Always sits at the counter, always orders the same thing, black coffee, rye toast, dry. He talks about his charity, Aegis Philanthropy, how he's helping the city fight the opioid crisis." "The irony," Mateo murmured. "Go on." "He wears a watch," I said, the image vivid in my mind. "It's big, gold and gaudy. The face isn't glass, it's a slab of milky white stone. Cookie, the day cook. Asked him about it. He laughed and said it was his custom quartz face. A one-of-a-kind." Rook and Mateo shared a look, a silent, heavy communication that chilled me more than the rain. "Rook," Mateo said, "look at the manifest again." Rook picked up the damp paper. "The main label is Clear Pier Mason, Dock 6, standard routing, but there's a secondary barcode, a logistics tag. It's almost completely smeared." He pulled a handheld scanner from his bag and ran it over the code. A laptop screen beeped. It's a redirect," Rook said, his voice tight. "Pier Mason is the decoy. The manifest was coded to reroute QA774 to cold storage number 3 in Bridesburg." "A swap point," Mateo said, standing. He walked to the massive, a floor-to-ceiling armored glass window that overlooked the sleeping, rain-soaked city. He owned this skyline. "They're moving the product out of the port under a fake federal guise, swapping it at a secure facility, and then it vanishes into the city," he mused. He turned back to me. A strategist moving his pieces. "The rules of your life have just changed. Lila, we are now operating under Veil law. It is very simple. You do not trust anyone. Not a single uniform, not IIB, not HTCA, and not the Philadelphia police. Nobody speaks to you unless Vera verifies them through 3 independent sources. You do not use your old phone. You do not go near your apartment. Your old life is a ghost." I swallowed, my throat dry. "And what about them? The men in the diner?" Mateo took a step toward me. He was close enough that I could smell the expensive wool of his suit and the cold night air still clinging to him. "They made a mistake. They put their hands on you inside my territory," he said. His voice was quiet, but it held the finality of a closing steel door. "When they touched you, they touched me." I looked at this man, this king of a dark, invisible empire. I was terrified. I was a waitress. I was nobody. But the alternative was a shallow grave near the river. I had spent my entire life being a victim, running from the system, running from debt, running from men who thought they could just take... I stopped shaking. I met his gaze. "I don't want to be a victim my whole life," I said. A flicker of something approval, perhaps, or just cold calculation passed through his eyes. He gave a single, short nod. "Good," Mateo Vale said, the words sealing the pact. "From now on, you're in my circle." The breathing room was over. The conversation at the Vale House wasn't a debrief, it was a deployment. Vera, Mateo, and Rook operated with a terrifying, synchronized efficiency. Decisions were made in seconds, information absorbed, and a plan formed before I'd even stopped dripping on their floor. By 3:42 in the morning, the rain had stopped, replaced by a silence so thick it felt like pressure. A heavy fog was rolling in from the Delaware, a cold, wet shroud that smelled of the riverbed, of rust and metal. Vera called it an advantage. It felt like a tomb. I wasn't a waitress anymore. Vera had stripped off my diner uniform and pushed me into a set of dark, heavy-duty overalls, a high-visibility vest that smelled of motor oil, and a hard hat. My thin sneakers were replaced with steel-toed boots that were 2 sizes too big. In the heavy backpack slung over my shoulders, there wasn't a change of clothes. There was a high-speed digital camera with a single-button burst function. "You don't aim. You don't focus," Vera had instructed, her voice like ice. "You point at anything that moves, and you press the button. Document everything." Mateo changed, too. He wore the same dockworker gear, the vest stretched taut across his shoulders, the cheap reflective plastic looking absurd over the man who, an hour ago, was wearing a suit that cost more than my car. He looked harder, more dangerous, like a predator forced into camouflage. Rook was already gone, a ghost sent ahead to clear the path. We moved through a maintenance tunnel that connected the Vale House to the port's perimeter. No car. Just 3 figures walking through the humid, pre-dawn fog. Pier Mason was a city of steel shadows. The massive container cranes were silent, their arms raised against the bruised purple sky. Rook materialized from behind a stack of shipping containers, nodded once, and pointed. They moved the rendezvous point, Yard N. The main camera went down 10 minutes ago. A technician is on site. Mateo directed me toward the squat concrete building of the central routing office. The board. Confirm the container number. My heart felt like it was trying to pound its way out of my chest. The drumming was so loud, I was afraid the fake agents would hear it. I slipped inside the office. It was empty. Glowing with the green light of the tracking screens, I found the main arrivals board. My eyes scanned the list. QA 774. There. It wasn't just blinking. It had been rerouted. Diverted Yard N. Hold for inspection. They're not just swapping it. I whispered into the tiny microphone Vera had taped to my collar. They're staging it as an official inspection. Yard N. "We see it, Lila!" Vera's voice crackled in my ear, sharp and disembodied. "The technician is the trigger. Mateo is moving to the auxiliary control booth. He'll find you an angle. Stay put and stay down." I crouched behind a bank of dispatch consoles, my hands gripping the backpack straps. I could see Yard N through the grime-covered window. It was isolated, lit by a few sickly yellow utility lights. The container, QA 774, was already there, sitting alone. On one of the monitors in front of me, the feed for Yard N was just static. Camera malfunction. Then, another screen flickered, a different view, high and from the side. Camera 3B. It panned, zoomed, and then locked, settling on the scene. Mateo. He was inside their system. I watched, mesmerized. The fake IDB agents I recognized the broad back of the one from the diner were forming a loose perimeter, and the technician was there, working on a junction box. A vehicle rolled into the yard, its diesel engine a low growl. It wasn't a semi-truck, it was a tanker, a sterile water tanker, the kind hospitals use for bulk supply. It backed up to the container. This was wrong, a water tanker for vitamin powder. Rook's voice, low and urgent in my ear. "They're not transporting powder. Lila, they're mixing it. It's a mobile lab. They're cutting the product right here, turning it into a liquid solution." The side of the tanker was translucent. I could see the liquid inside sloshing. It wasn't clear, like water. It was a pale, shimmering color, almost iridescent in the yellow light, the color of the Unolife vitamin B12 logo Mateo had shown me. The technician turned away from the junction box, barking an order at the driver. He pulled off his hard hat to wipe his forehead. The light hit his face. My breath hitched. My blood ran cold, turning to sludge in my veins. It was Dorian Cade. The smiling philanthropist from the diner, the man with the quartz-faced watch. He looked different without his glasses, his features sharper, colder. I fumbled with the backpack, my fingers numb and clumsy. I ripped the camera out, point and click. I jammed my finger on the button, the burst mode firing off a series of silent, rapid clicks. The lens was steady, but my body was shaking. "It's Cade," I whispered, my voice breaking. "The technician, it's Dorian Cade." I zoomed. He turned his head, shouting at one of the IAB fakes. The light caught the side of his neck. I saw it clearly. A small, pale scar just below his left ear, shaped like the letter V. I kept shooting. Click, click, click. His face, the tanker, the container, the fake agents. "I have him," I gasped. "I have his face. I have the scar." "Good girl," Mateo's voice. "Vera has the images. Get out. Retrace your steps to the tunnel. Now." "Rook, extract her," Vera ordered. But it was too late. I had been too focused on the camera. One of the fake agents at the perimeter edge wasn't looking at the tanker. He was looking at the dispatch office. He was looking right at me. He didn't shout. He didn't raise a gun. He just lifted his hand and pointed straight at my window. "Lila, run!" Mateo's voice was no longer calm. It was a roar. I didn't think. I just bolted. I crashed through the office door and into the open yard, running not for the tunnel, but for the only cover I could see the maze of shipping containers 50 yards away. There, get the girl. The yard exploded. Boots pounded on concrete. I dove between two massive blue containers, my lungs on fire. The air was thick with fog and the taste of my own fear. I slid around a corner and slammed into a dead end, a solid wall of corrugated steel. Trapped. I turned. The beefy agent from the diner skidded around the corner, blocking the only way out. He was smiling, a predator's grin. He wasn't even breathing hard. He raised his radio. Not a weapon. He was going to call in the pack. Was nowhere to. A shadow detached itself from the top of the container above him. Mateo landed on the agent's back. There was no sound, no grunt, just a transfer of weight. Mateo's arm snaked around the man's neck, his other hand gripping the man's wrist. He twisted. I heard the sound, a wet, definitive snap. The man's body went limp, his radio clattering to the pavement. He didn't scream. He just crumpled. Mateo caught him before he fell, lowering him silently to the ground. He'd broken his arm, or his neck. I didn't know which. I didn't want to know. Mateo grabbed my arm, his grip a vice. "Don't look," he hissed. "Stay low." He pulled me into the maze. We ran, twisting and turning. Another agent appeared ahead of us, raising his pistol. A sound, like a high-speed thwip, cut the air. A spark erupted from the wall-mounted alarm box just beside the agent's head. He flinched, confused, looking up. Rook. He was on a gantry crane above us. He hadn't fired a gun. As the agent looked up, Rook threw something, a dark sliver of steel. A knife. It flew end over end and embedded itself, thunk into the alarm's wiring. The agent slammed his hand on the button. Nothing. The alarm was dead. "The rail spur," Rook bellowed, his voice echoing off the steel. "Move!" We burst out of the container maze and onto a set of rusted, abandoned internal rail tracks. A spotlight from the main tower, alerted by the movement, snapped on. It cut a brilliant white cone through the fog, sweeping toward us. In here, Rook was on the tracks, yanking open the heavy door of a derelict boxcar. Mateo didn't slow down. He grabbed me by the vest and half threw me into the pitch-black, musty interior. I landed hard on the wooden floor. He and Rook scrambled in after me, sliding the massive door shut with a groaning scrape of metal. A second later, the world outside the door was flooded with blinding white light. The spotlight beam washed over our hiding place and then moved on. Silence. I was shaking violently, my teeth chattering. The boxcar smelled of mildew and old iron. I couldn't breathe. Mateo clicked on a small, powerful penlight, keeping the beam aimed at the floor. He put a finger to his lips, then tapped the earpiece he wore, listening. His breathing was perfectly even. He was completely still. I could hear, faintly, the sounds from the yard, the rumble of the tanker pulling away, shouted, panicked commands. They were accelerating. Mateo turned his head. His face was only inches from mine in the small circle of light. The shadows made his features look like they were carved from stone. "You did well," he whispered. "You got the proof." He tilted his head, listening to the world outside. "But you just became the most valuable witness on the coast, and the most hunted." I was about to ask what happened next when a new sound pierced the fog, faint, but growing louder. The deep, mournful horn of a freight train from the mainland bridge. Mateo's eyes narrowed in the dark. He looked at Rook, who was already staring at a device in his hand. "Vera," Rook whispered, his voice grim. "The manifest just updated again. The Bridesburg cold storage location is a decoy. It's been wiped, the entire freight order. They just rerouted the tanker." Mateo's gaze locked back onto mine. The cold calculation was back. "They're not staying in Philadelphia," he said. "Quartz isn't just moving the product, he's moving the entire operation." Rook looked up from his screen. "They have a new destination. New Haven. We didn't run back. We moved. We ghosted through the maintenance tunnels. The silence of our retreat a stark contrast to the chaos we had left behind. The smell of the river and the fog clung to us. But inside the Vale House, the air was dry, filtered, and humming with the sound of high-capacity servers. I was still in the borrowed overalls, my hands black with grime from the boxcar floor. Vera met us at the threshold. She didn't ask if we were okay. She simply plucked the high-speed camera from my hands. "The clean room," she said. "Now." She disappeared into a glass-walled laboratory. We, Mateo, Rook, and I gathered at the black granite table. It felt like a war room. Rook was already plugged in, his fingers a blur. Mateo stood at the floor-to-ceiling armored window, a dark silhouette against the first, sickly gray light of dawn. Then the images flashed onto a massive wall-mounted screen. My photos. They were shockingly clear. Dorian Cade's face, captured in the ugly yellow light, his features twisted in a snarl, the V-shaped scar below his ear, the tanker, the logo, the fake IUB agents. "Processing," Vera's voice came over an intercom, sharp and sterile. "Running facial recognition against Cade's known associates and cross-referencing all Port Authority manifests." "He's using his own infrastructure," Rook grunted, not looking up from his screen. "While I was dark, I burrowed into Atlantic Beacon Freight. Their payroll server is a joke. It's a pass-through." "For Aegis," Mateo asked the window. "Exactly." Rook pointed to his screen. "The dock workers who moved the container, the technician who reported the broken camera, even the driver of the tanker, none of them get a check from Atlantic Beacon. They're all on the recipient list for Aegis Philanthropy Crisis Grants. He's paying his entire criminal crew with tax-deductible charity money. He's washing his payroll in public," Mateo murmured. "The photos confirm the route." Vera's voice cut in again. "The tanker's plates, combined with surveillance stills from toll plazas, show a dedicated logistics triangle. Philadelphia to New Haven to Providence, then back. He's not just shipping, he's processing. Philadelphia is the port. New Haven is the lab. Providence is distribution." "Aegis Philanthropy," I said. The name felt like bile in my throat. They both looked at me. I was just the witness, the stray, but the word had ripped something open. "My sister," I said, my voice quiet but shaking. "Her name was Elena. She died 2 years ago. A bad back, a prescription that ran out. She bought pills from a street-level dealer. She thought they were legitimate. They were fakes, laced with synthetic junk." I stared at the granite table, at the reflection of my own tired, dirty face. She didn't wake up. He's holding galas to fight the crisis, while his other hand is pushing the very poison that killed her. He's making a profit on both sides of the coffin. Rook stopped typing. He looked down. a rare moment of discomfort on his harsh features. Mateo turned from the window. He walked toward me, his face unreadable. He studied me, not with the cold calculation of before, but with a new, heavy stillness. He was silent for a long, uncomfortable minute. He didn't offer sympathy. He didn't say he was sorry. He just looked at me, truly saw me, and acknowledged the raw, gaping wound I had just exposed. Then he turned his head slightly. "Vera, locate Lila Moreno's mother." My blood froze. "What? No, don't. You can't involve her. She's in a home." "The South Philly care residence," Mateo stated, not asking. "I know, we ran your file the second you got in my car." "She's safe," I insisted, my voice rising. "No," Mateo said, his voice flat. "She's not. I know that residence. I know its funding. A significant portion of its operating budget comes from a yearly grant from Aegis Philanthropy. She's not safe. Lila, she's leverage." I felt the floor drop out from under me. He was right. Cade had his hooks in every part of the city, including the part that held the only family I had left. "Vera," Mateo continued, "prep the Havenworth Clinic. Full intake protocol. Top security wing. I want her moved in the next hour." What is Havenworth?" I whispered. "It's mine," he said simply. "It's off the books. It's where my people go. The best doctors in the country. And security Cade couldn't crack with a tank. He will never find her. She will be safe." I stared at him. This man of shadows and violence. He wasn't asking my permission. He was closing a vulnerability. He was protecting an asset. Yes, but it felt like something more. He was protecting me. My past, my sister, was a ghost, but my mother was real. I had spent my entire life trusting no one, but I was out of options. "Okay," I breathed. "Yes, please." It was the first time I'd ever willingly placed my trust in a man who lived in the dark. The energy in the room shifted instantly, from tactical to strategic. "Cade is moving," Mateo said. "His operation is expanding. We're no longer just observing, we're intervening. His annual Aegis Gala is in 2 days. At the Lighthouse Museum in New Haven, it's the perfect cover to see his operation, his partners, and his distribution chain up close." "Invitation only," Rook said, "and the list is tight, biometric security. We can't get in." "You can't," Mateo agreed. "But Mateo, the silent partner in a new West Coast wellness brand, can, and he's bringing his lead herbalist, Leah, an expert in natural pain management." He looked at me. "Leah, that's you." The fear I'd held at bay in the boxcar came rushing back, cold and sharp. My breath hitched. "Me, I can't. I'm a waitress. I'll panic. They'll know. Cade will see my face." "He saw a terrified girl in a diner uniform, in the dark," Mateo countered, stepping closer. "He won't recognize the woman who walks into his party. But you're right about one thing." He was standing directly in front of me now. "You're panicking. Your breathing is too shallow. You're in the port. You're seeing the agent's face. You need to get out." "I can't," I gasped, shaking my head. "Yes, you can. Look at me." His voice was low, compelling. "We are going to do what I do. Box breathing. It cuts the panic. It forces your body to obey. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. He held my gaze, his own eyes intense. "With me. Now. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. I tried, my breath shuddering. He reached out and laid his forefinger against the pulse point on my wrist. His touch wasn't hard, but it wasn't soft. It was definite. It was warm. A jolt, like a low-voltage current, shot up my arm. "Hold it! 2, 3, 4. I held my breath, my eyes locked on his. The world narrowed to the space between us, the feel of his skin on mine. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. My breath rushed out. Hold the empty, 2, 3, 4. We did it again, and a third time. The roaring in my ears subsided. The black spots in my vision cleared. My heart slowed from a frantic sprint to a heavy, pounding drum. He kept his finger on my pulse for 1 beat longer than necessary. I saw it then, a flicker, a momentary disturbance in his iron control, a spark of something human in them before it was ruthlessly suppressed. He stepped back, breaking the contact. The air rushed back in, cold. "You won't panic," so he said. "If you feel it rising, you find my eyes and you breathe the box." He nodded to Vera, who had reappeared. "Vera, prepare her!" For the next day, I was remade. Vera was ruthless. She scrubbed the diner grime and the port fear off me. She taught me posture, etiquette, how to hold a champagne flute, and then she brought the dress. It was midnight blue, silk. It slid onto my skin like cool water, fitting perfectly. It was a gown of quiet, terrifying expense. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see Lila Moreno. I saw Leah. I walked back into the main room. Mateo was discussing routes with Rook. He looked up as I entered. He stopped talking. He just stood there, frozen. It wasn't a long time. It was half a second, a single, unguarded half-beat where the boss, the strategist, the killer vanished. In his eyes, I saw a profound, echoing loneliness, a hollow space that I recognized because it mirrored my own. Then he blinked, and the mask slammed back into place. "It will suffice," he said, his voice carefully neutral. He crossed the room and handed me a pair of small, glittering earrings. "Crystal studs," he said. I knew they weren't. "Microphones," I stated. "Vera will hear everything," he confirmed. "But they are a last resort. This is not the port. Lila, this is a snake pit. If anything goes wrong, if Cade even looks at you the wrong way, you do not run. You do not fight. You find my eyes. You just look at me." He leaned an inch closer. "I will come." It was not a boast. It was a blood oath. We spent the last few hours practicing our cover. He drilled me, relentless, testing my new identity. "Cade asks you why you're interested in Aegis," he said, pacing. I tell him his distribution model for natural wellness is fascinating. I ask about his supply chain. He says you look familiar. I tell him I have one of those faces, I recited. He doesn't believe you. He grabs your arm. He calls security. I was supposed to say I'd signal Vera, but I didn't. I looked him in the eye. I tell him to take his hand off me, I said, my voice sharp. I tell him that if he doesn't, he'll be drinking his cheap champagne through a straw for the rest of his life. Rook choked on his water. A strange sound filled the room, a short, sharp, genuine laugh. Mateo, when he was actually smiling, it transformed his face, erasing the hardness for a split second. "She's a fast learner, Rook," he said, the smile fading but the approval lingering. "Good, don't be a victim, be a weapon." Later, as the city lights began to glitter, I stood at the massive window, the Philadelphia skyline, which had always seemed so big and intimidating, now looked like a map. Mateo came to stand beside me, not too close, but sharing the view. We watched the endless flow of headlights, the pinpricks of light in the dark, reflected in the armored glass. In the reflection, I saw us, the waitress and the mafia boss, a strange, symbiotic pair born of coffee, fear, and fog. We weren't a couple. We weren't partners. We were just two solitary, broken people, aimed at the same target. The Lighthouse Museum in New Haven was a monument to clean money. It was all glass and white marble, hanging over the dark water of the Sound. Chandeliers dripped light like shattered stars, catching the diamonds on the throats of senators' wives and the polished rims of champagne flutes. The air was thick with perfume and the murmur of powerful, polite lies. At the center of it all, Dorian Cade stood at a podium, bathed in a soft, forgiving spotlight. He was back to the man I recognized from the diner, the philanthropist, the savior. His smile was warm, his voice resonant. "We are not just fighting a crisis," he boomed, raising his glass. "We are providing a new path. Aegis Philanthropy promises a humane, compassionate solution to the pain that plagues America." The room erupted in applause. I felt my stomach clench. Humane. He used that word. Mateo, looking devastating in a tuxedo that was less a suit and more an act of aggression, touched my elbow. "Leah, go to work." I circulated, the midnight blue dress making me feel like an imposter, a shadow. I intercepted Cade as he stepped off the podium, smiling my nervous, brilliant herbalist smile. "Mr. Cade," I said, my voice pitched with just the right amount of academic awe. "Leah Stavros, your speech was inspiring. I work in holistic supply chains. I was fascinated by your logistics. For the sheer volume of vitamins you move, your cold chain integrity must be impeccable." I had hit a nerve. His smile didn't falter, but it hardened at the edges. "We prioritize safety above all. Miss Stavros, our facilities are state-of-the-art." But his eyes, for just 1/10 of a second, flicked past me to a man in an identical suit standing by the exit. As he looked away, his right hand, hidden by the podium he was still gripping, made a gesture. 3 fingers, then 2, tapped against the wood, a silent code. The aide, seeing the signal, immediately turned and walked out. Cade had just confirmed the cold chain was the key, and he'd flagged me as a threat. "If you'll excuse me," he said, the smile gone. I let him go. I needed to find a softer target. Across the room, Mateo was a picture of effortless charm. He was dancing with the New Haven port director, a woman in a red dress that was far too tight. He spun her smoothly, his hand firm on the small of her back. He was charming her, leaning in, his expression one of deep interest. But I watched his thumb. It was tapping, tapping against the silk of her dress, a silent rhythm. He was guiding her, turning her just so. I knew Vera was using my crystal earrings as a directional microphone, and Mateo was positioning the director like a chess piece, forcing her to boast, forcing her to speak toward me, capturing every word about port efficiency and after-hours inspections that were completely off the books. I turned away and found my target, a kind-faced older man in a Roman collar, standing alone by the silent auction. He had a name badge, Father Elia, St. Atwood's Parish. "Father," I said, offering a sad smile, "it's a wonderful event, Mr. Cade is doing God's work." The priest beamed. "He truly is. My dear, a blessing. Our parish food pantry was nearly empty, and then Aegis arrived. He has given us a new mission." "A new mission," I prompted, sipping my champagne. "Oh, yes. He's even funding the renovation of our old warehouse, St. Atwood's. We're turning it into the central distribution hub for the new vitamin program. He said the first shipments arrived tonight to be sorted before the morning wellness fairs. We are so blessed to be the ones to get this help to the people." My blood ran cold. St. Atwood, the warehouse, the vitamins were arriving tonight. Before I could ask another question, a piercing shriek split the air. "Wee, wee!" The fire alarm? Strobe lights began to flash, slicing the glittering room into red. Fractured pieces, people screamed, champagne glasses shattered. "Please, remain calm," Cade's voice boomed over the speakers. But there was a new urgency. "Exit in an orderly fashion. Our staff will guide you." A staff member, one of the fake IEB agents from the pier, now in museum security attire, grabbed the port director and steered her toward an emergency exit. It wasn't panic, it was a drill. Mateo materialized at my side. He grabbed my arm, his grip like steel, and pulled me in the opposite direction, away from the screaming crowd toward a dark, quiet wing of the museum. "That wasn't an accident," I said, my heart hammering. "No," Mateo said, his voice a low growl. "It's a clearing ritual. He's moving his fake HTCA team. He's moving the product." "To St. Atwood," I finished. We were in a long hallway, lit only by the blue floor-level safety lights. It was lined with modern art, dark canvases that seemed to drink the light. "He's running, and we're empty-handed," I said, frustrated. "Not yet." Mateo stopped in front of a door marked Archives, Staff Only. Cade is arrogant. He's running his entire criminal enterprise on the same servers he uses for his charity gala. He pulled a small, black device from his pocket. He just gave us the perfect cover. He jammed the device into the electronic lock. It beeped, and the light flashed green. "Now comes the dangerous part," he whispered, pulling me inside. The archive room was cold, a black cavern of humming server racks. Mateo plugged a flash drive into the main console. A progress bar glowed on a small screen. "I need the root files," Mateo said, his eyes scanning the data stream. "The real ones, not the decoys. He's got to have the master files for the Providence drop. There, I said, pointing. My diner days of reading bad handwriting on manifests made me fast. The file wasn't labeled Providence. It was P-Fish, Harvest. "Harvest," Mateo repeated, the word tasting like poison. He clicked, and the download began. 5%, 10%. The door behind us hissed open. I spun around. A bodyguard, built like a refrigerator, stood in the doorway. It wasn't one of the fakes. This was Cade's personal man, the one who had been standing by the podium. "Mr. Vale," the bodyguard said, his voice flat. "Mr. Cade was wondering what you were doing in here." He reached inside his jacket. Mateo didn't move toward the bodyguard. He moved toward me. He grabbed my upper arm, his face contorted in a mask of pure, jealous rage. "Who is this guy?" Mateo roared, playing the part of a cuckolded businessman. He shoved me behind him, as if protecting me, but he was just clearing his line of attack. "Are you with him? Is this what you do? You leave me at a party to meet this ape." The bodyguard was completely thrown. He was expecting a fight, not a domestic dispute. "Sir, I just..." "Get your hands off her!" Mateo yelled, though the man hadn't touched me. Mateo shoved the bodyguard. It looked like a clumsy, drunken push, but it was calculated. It put the bodyguard off balance, forcing him to step back into a narrow space between two server racks. The man reached for his gun. He was too slow. Mateo moved. It was not a push. It was a strike. He slammed the man's gun hand against the steel rack. The gun clattered. Mateo's other arm came up, not in a punch, but in a coil, his forearm pressing against the side of the man's neck. He pinned him, his full weight pressing the man's carotid artery against the metal shelf. There was no sound, no grunt of effort, just the hum of the servers. The bodyguard's eyes went wide with shock, then confusion. His hands clawed uselessly at Mateo's arm. Mateo held him there, his gaze cold and empty, staring at the wall. 4. He counted, so softly I almost didn't hear it. 3, 2, 1. The man's body went completely slack. He didn't fall. Mateo was holding him up. He adjusted his grip, easing the body silently to the floor, where it lay hidden in the shadows of the server rack. It was over. No blood, no noise. Just a man turned off like a light switch. The flash drive beeped. Download complete. Mateo pulled it from the port. He was breathing normally. I was not. My heart was trying to escape my ribs. I could feel the panic rising. The image of the man's face, the snap of the agent's arm. Breathe the box. Breathe the box. I forced the air in. 1, 2, 3, 4. I looked at Mateo. He was looking at me, his chest rising and falling in the same steady rhythm. He knew. He held out the tiny flash drive. My hand was shaking. I took it. Vera had given me one instruction for this. I reached up, my fingers trembling, and slid the memory card into a hidden slot in the heavy crystal hair clip holding my braid. Mateo watched my hands. When I was finished, he reached out and, for just a second, squeezed my hand, a gesture of reassurance. A silent, shared breath, our pulses, thrumming with adrenaline, synced in that small, warm contact. "Let's go," he said. We didn't go back to the party. We took a staff hallway, moving quickly. We hit a set of double doors and burst into the chaos of the museum kitchen. Chefs in white hats were yelling. Waiters were running, and the alarms were still shrieking. It was hot, bright, and smelled of wine and fear. As we pushed through the swinging doors to the loading dock, a chef behind us, frustrated and trying to finish an order, slammed a bottle of brandy into a hot pan. A massive whoosh of blue flame erupted behind us. Licking at the ceiling, it lit the kitchen, throwing our shadows long and dark onto the loading dock. It was a cleansing fire, a real one. A promise that we would burn Dorian Cade's entire humane operation to the ground. We drove north, leaving the sirens and the glittering chaos of New Haven behind. Rook had staged a different car, a dark, anonymous sedan, in a parking garage 2 blocks from the museum. The midnight blue dress and the tuxedo were bundled in a duffel bag, thrown in the trunk like discarded skins. We were back in dark, functional gear. The adrenaline from the archive room, from the fire and the silent, terrifying efficiency of Mateo's violence, was finally draining away, leaving me hollow and vibrating. We hit Interstate 95, heading up the dark Connecticut coastline. The highway was empty at this hour, and I could smell the sharp, cold tang of salt water from the sound. For an hour, the only sound was the hum of the tires on the asphalt. Mateo drove, his focus absolute. I watched the dark water, the pinprick lights of distant houses. He pulled over at a closed-down scenic overlook. "Switch," he said. I stared at him. "What?" "You drive? You've been a passenger in all of this. It's time to put your hands on the wheel." He wasn't asking. "It helps," he added, his voice softer. "It reminds you that you control the direction." I slid into the driver's seat. The leather was still warm from him. My hands gripped the wheel. It felt heavy, real. I pulled back onto the highway, and for the first time since I'd grabbed that greasy slip of paper, I felt a flicker of courage that was my own. Mateo reclined the passenger seat, a fraction of an inch, a small concession to the night. He was quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. "You reminded me of someone tonight," he said, his voice low, aimed at the windshield. "Back at the Vale House, when you told me about your sister." I kept my eyes on the road. "Oh, a girl, back in Detroit, when I was just starting. Little Odessa. Her name was Anya. She saw something she shouldn't have. Just like you, I was tasked with watching her, keeping her safe until the bosses decided what to do." His voice was flat, a recitation of old facts. "I was young, arrogant. I thought I could handle it. I left her alone for 20 minutes. When I came back..." He stopped. He didn't need to finish. "It wasn't my fault," he said, the words sounding rehearsed, a lie he'd told himself 1,000 times. "But it was my failure. It wired me differently. It makes you obsessive about protecting the people who get caught in the gears, about not letting another ghost get made." He was talking about me. I wasn't just an asset. I was his penance. The sky, which had been clear, turned on us. It started as a hard, driving rain, and then, with a terrifying crack, it turned to ice, hail. It hammered the roof and the windshield with the sound of 1,000 tiny gavels. It was impossible to see, impossible to drive. "Off," Mateo said, his voice tight, snapping back to the present. "Now, next exit. We're a target out here." I wrestled the car down the exit ramp. A sign, flickering in the storm, offered salvation, the Seafarer Motel. Its neon pink and green sign was a beacon of cheap anonymity. Rook was already there, his black truck parked in the shadows at the far end of the lot. He was a sentinel, watching. Mateo's phone buzzed, a text from Vera, sent through Rook's secure hub. "Room 7, Mateo said. "End of the row." The room was a time capsule. It smelled of industrial bleach, damp carpet, and stale cigarettes. The air conditioner under the window rattled and groaned, fighting the storm. The curtains, printed with faded green anchors, rustled from the draft. It was small, cramped, and 1,000 miles from the cold. Clean precision of the Vale House. Mateo locked the deadbolt and drew the chain. I stood in the middle of the room, dripping. The adrenaline was gone, and I was just cold. He took off his jacket, the one that had concealed the Kevlar at the gala. I saw it then. A long, angry red scratch across the back of his right hand. From his knuckles to his wrist, it was from the server rack. From the moment he had turned that bodyguard off like a switch. "Sit down," I said. My voice was hoarse. He looked surprised, but he sat on the edge of the stiff, queen-sized bed. I went into the tiny bathroom, ran a washcloth under water as hot as I could stand, and brought it out along with the pathetic, paper-wrapped bar of soap. I knelt on the floor in front of him. "Give me your hand." He didn't move. He just watched me. I took his hand. It was large, warm, and covered in fine scars. A killer's hand. I gently, firmly washed the blood and grime from the scratch. My fingers were trembling, but my touch was steady. This, at least, I understood. Tending to a wound. When I was done, I didn't let go, and he didn't pull away. We stayed like that, me kneeling on the floor, him sitting on the bed, our hands joined. The only sounds were the rattling air conditioner and the tink-tink-tink of the last pieces of hail hitting the window. His eyes held mine. He wasn't the boss. He wasn't the strategist. He was just a man in a cheap motel room. "Lila," he whispered, and his voice was rough. "We still have a choice. We have the data in your hair clip. We can give it to Vera. Let her burn Cade to the ground. I can make you and your mother disappear. A new life. Somewhere warm. Somewhere he can never touch you. This doesn't have to be your fight." He was offering me an escape, the same one he'd failed to give Anya. I looked at his hand in mine. I thought of Elena. I thought of Dorian Cade's humane solution. I thought of the word harvest. "He's not just a criminal, Mateo," I said, my voice as steady as my hands had been. "He's a ghoul. He's feeding on people like my sister. If I run, he just finds another town, another set of victims. No." I tightened my grip. "This is my fight. I choose to keep going." His gaze intensified. He raised his free hand, slowly, as if not to spook a wild animal. He hesitated, then laid his fingers against my cheek. His thumb brushed over the skin just below my eye. It was a question. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull back. I leaned into his touch. The air in the room, which had been cold, suddenly felt thick and hot. He leaned in, his eyes never leaving mine, giving me every second to stop him. I met him halfway. The kiss was not what I expected. It was not the kiss of a mafioso, hard and possessive. It was soft. It was hesitant. It was a question, an exploration, and then it deepened, a long, slow drowning. It tasted of the cold night air, of the salt from the drive, and of a profound, shared loneliness. It was a recognition. His arms encircled me, pulling me up from the floor. My hands slid from his to his shoulders, gripping the fabric of his shirt. I felt his heart, a heavy, solid thump-thump-thump against my own. It was a drumbeat in the storm. He broke the kiss, resting his forehead against mine. We were both breathing, a little too fast, sharing the same small space of air. "Lila," he breathed, the name a statement, not a question. "I'm here," I whispered back. He looked into my eyes, a final, silent question. I gave him a final, silent answer. His heavy coat, his armor, slid off the bed, falling to the floor in a heap. It was a surrender, a flag of truce against the past that haunted us both. We lay down on the bed, side by side, on top of the thin, worn-out comforter. We just lay there for a long time. The storm outside had passed. The rattling air conditioner was our only witness. My head was on his shoulder. His arm was around me, and our hands were clasped, tight, on the space between us. "What's the first thing you'll do?" I asked the dark ceiling. "When it's normal?" He was quiet for a long time. "A normal breakfast," he said, his voice a low rumble in my ear. "In a diner, by a window, where I can read a newspaper and not have to watch the door." A small, sad smile touched my lips. "A normal laugh," I said, "the kind that makes your stomach hurt, the kind you can't stop." We were quiet, two ghosts sharing these small, impossible dreams of being real. A vibration, sharp, insistent. It came from the phone in his pocket. He ignored it. It came again. With a sigh, he released me, The spell broken, he sat up, the bed creaking, and pulled out the phone. He read the secure text from Vera. The change was instant. The man who dreamed of breakfast vanished. The boss was back. His shoulders straightened, his jaw set. "Vera's decrypted the harvest file," he said, his voice all tactics. "The Providence Fish Pier. It's the final mixing point. They're moving the primary batch tonight, midnight." He stood, his shadow long in the dim light from the motel sign. He read the last line of the text. "And she has confirmation from a port source. Quartz is supervising the delivery personally." He turned to me. He held out his hand to pull me up. The warmth was gone, replaced by the cold, sharp focus of the mission. "Mateo," I said as I stood, "I wanted to ask what this was. What we were." He saw the question in my eyes. He squeezed my hand, the one I had cleaned. "After," he said, "a promise and a command. When this is done, then we talk about us." He bent and picked his jacket up off the floor. He shrugged the armor back on. He opened the door. The hail had stopped. The air was sharp and clean. The wet pavement of the parking lot was drying under the cold moonlight. The wheels of fate were ready to roll. The Providence Fish Pier was nothing like the bustling port in Philadelphia. It was a place of endings. The air hung thick and cold, a pungent mix of diesel, salt, and the deep, unsettling smell of fish guts. The St. Atwood warehouse, which Father Elia had spoken of with such hope, was a squat, windowless block of gray concrete at the far end of the pier. It was not a place of charity. It was a processing lab. Vera, back in the digital fortress of the Vale House, was our eyes and God, Rook, Mateo, and I were the ghosts. "This isn't just a distribution hub." Mateo's voice was a low murmur in my ear, the earpiece a tiny, cold presence. We were crouched behind a mountain of rusted lobster traps. Vera analyzed the manifests. "They're bringing in the vitamin powder from Philly." "Yes, but they're also bringing in precursor chemicals from a shell corpse in Nova Scotia. This is the mixing room." "What are they mixing it with?" I whispered, my breath pluming in the cold. "A neuroagent," he said, his voice hard. "Something to create obsessive, long-term dependency. He's not just selling them a drug. He's selling them a chemical shackle, disguised as free vitamins." My blood ran cold. This was Elena's nightmare, weaponized. "Phase 1, Vera's voice crackled, sharp and sterile. "Now." As if she had flipped a switch on the world. The south end security lights of the pier flickered, sputtered, and died, plunging our approach into near total darkness. The backup generators, Vera had assured us, were on a 30-second delay. "That's Rook's cue," Mateo said. Across the yard, a white utility van, complete with a revolving amber light, pulled up to the main warehouse gate. The logo on the side was crisp United Maritime Safety Board, UMSB, another non-existent agency. Rook, wearing a white hard hat and a clipboard, stepped out and began an angry, performative argument with the two guards at the gate, pointing at the dark security lights. "He's citing an emergency electrical fault," Mateo said. "He's given them a mandatory evacuation drill order for the North Quadrant. It will pull half their security detail away." "And us? We're not security. We're pest control." He pointed to a small, grated ventilation duct near the foundation. "Vera's files show this leads to the cold storage corridor. Cold storage room 2 is where they keep the finished product before mixing. We need one pure sample." He went first, moving with a fluid, silent grace that belied his size. The grate came off with 2 silent twists of a tool. I followed him into the dark, my heart hammering a rhythm against my ribs. We were in. The air was frigid, humming with the sound of massive condensers. We moved past rows of frozen fish, the smell overwhelming. We found the door marked CS2. Mateo used a thin, black device. The electronic lock clicked open. Inside, it was a different world. Not fish, just row after row of industrial pallets, stacked high with white plastic tubs. The logo Unolife Vitamin B12 was stamped on every one. "Get the sample," Mateo ordered. He stood guard at the door. a shadow among shadows. I pulled a sterile sampling kit from my pack. I wasn't the shaking waitress from the harbor light anymore. My hand was steady. I pierced the seal on a tub, extracted a small amount of the fine white powder, and sealed the vial. As I slid the vial into my pack, I saw the shipping manifest taped to the side of the lead pallet. It was a list, not of shipping codes, but of towns. West Warwick, RI, Fall River, MA, New London, CT. "Matteo," I whispered, my throat tight. "Look at this." He moved to my side, read the list. "These are all low-income districts," I said, the horror dawning. "They're all towns hit hard by the last recession. They have underfunded clinics." "He's not just selling it," Matteo said, his voice a low growl of compressed fury. "He's targeting them. Aegis will donate it. Free health screenings to hook the most vulnerable people in New England. It's a harvest, just like the file said." I took a small metallic disc from my pocket, a nano GPS transmitter. I peeled the adhesive backing and slid it deep into the plastic wrapping of the pallet, hiding it between two tubs. My hand didn't shake. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in me. I was planting a seed of destruction. I looked up. Matteo was watching me, not the door. His expression wasn't cold. It wasn't tactical. It was pride, a brief, unguarded flicker of it. It warmed me more than 1,000 coats. Then, a voice from the corridor. "Dorian Cade." "Just make sure Quartz understands." Cade's voice was sharp, angry. He was close. "The harvest window is tied directly to the port festival. It gives us crowd cover. It gives us a plausible reason for the wellness tents. If the shipment is late, the entire..." He was walking with someone. Matteo flattened us against the shelving, pulling me behind him, his body a solid wall. He held his breath. I held mine. Cade's voice faded down the hall. We waited. 1 beat, 2 beats. Then chaos. A new set of voices, loud, authoritative. IIB federal agents, hands up. Everyone against the wall. My heart leaped. They were here. The real IB. Someone had tipped them off. It was over. Matteo grabbed my arm. "No," he hissed. "This is wrong." He pulled me to the crack in the door. We watched as a half-dozen agents in real, tactical INUB gear swarmed the corridor. Weapons raised, they pushed Cade's men against the wall. Then the IAB captain stepped forward. He lowered his rifle. Dorian Cade stepped out of an office, his hands raised in mock surrender, a smile on his face. The IAB captain smiled back. He reached out and shook Cade's hand. "Mr. Cade, good to see you. We cleared the perimeter, just as you asked. No local interference." My stomach dropped. I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't compromised. They were partners. They were Cade's private army, wearing the United States government's uniform. "They're not raiding him." I breathed, horrified. "They're protecting him." Matteo's hand was already on his earpiece. The pride was gone, replaced by Arctic cold. "Vera, Rook, Plan B, now." He didn't wait for a reply. He grabbed my hand. "We're not getting out the way we came in." He ran, pulling me, not back to the vent, but deeper into the warehouse, toward the main loading bay. "Vera, kill the power," he snapped. "All of it." The world went black. The hum of the condensers died. The lights, the security panels, everything. Emergency-only red lights flickered on, casting the massive space in a bloody, hellish glow. Shouts erupted from the corridor. The IEB agents were confused. "Rook, the gate!" Matteo yelled. We burst into the main loading bay. Rook was there, by the massive, rolled steel gate. He wasn't at the controls. He was rigging a charge. He gave a sharp nod. "Matteo, the pallet!" Rook shouted. Matteo saw it, a massive 4-ton pallet of packaged fish, waiting for morning shipment. Sitting on an electric forklift, he shoved me into the driver's seat. "You know how to use these," he stated. It wasn't a question. He'd seen my work file. "The button on the dash," he yelled over the rising shouts. "When the gate goes, You hit that button and you drive straight. Do not stop. He ran to a nearby control panel. Smashing the glass, he was opening the secondary security lock, overriding the system. The IUB agents and Cade's men burst into the loading bay, guns up. There, don't let them! Rook hit his detonator. The explosion wasn't a fireball. It was a concussive boom that ripped the gate's locking mechanism from the concrete. The massive steel door collapsed outward into the yard with a shriek of tortured metal. Now, Lila, Mateo roared. I slammed the button. The forklift roared to life. I jammed the accelerator. The two agents in the doorway didn't even have time to aim. The forks of the machine hit them, tossing them aside like dolls. The massive pallet smashed through the ruined doorway, a 4-ton battering ram. I saw Rook on the other side of the yard. He threw something into the middle of the agents who were pouring out after us. It was a small, silver cylinder. It detonated with an agonizing, high-pitched screech and a flash of white light so bright it felt like the sun had exploded in my eyes. A sonic flashbang, men screamed, dropping their weapons, clutching their eyes and ears. In that single, blinding moment of chaos, Mateo was at my side, yanking me from the forklift. Move! But I wasn't done. I had my personal data pad in my hand. Vera, I'm in, I yelled, running. Cade's terminal is on the loading dock. I have a clean shot at his Wi-Fi. I hit the macro Vera had built for me, the harvest schedule, the real one uploaded to Vera's secure server. Sent. Then I hit the second macro. I planted the decoy, a corrupted file, massive in size, designed to look like the real data. But it was a trap, a digital bomb that would fry Cade's entire local network when he tried to open it. Planted. Leela, now. Mateo grabbed my waist and hauled me with him. We didn't run for the van. We ran for the pier's edge. He kicked open a rusted storm drain grate. Go. I slid into the darkness, landing on a concrete sluice that smelled of low tide. He landed behind me. We ran, bent double, for what felt like a mile, the sound of the ocean growing louder. We emerged onto the main seawall. We were out. The chaos of the pier was behind us, muffled by the concrete. Here, it was quiet. The moon was high and bright, a smear of liquid silver on the black water. It was the calm at the eye of the hurricane. Mateo stood, breathing hard, looking back toward the pier. I looked at him, the man who had shown me pride, who had trusted me with his plan. He didn't look at me. He was staring at the ground. At the end of the seawall, drawn in thick white chalk on the dark stone, was a symbol. It was a sharp, perfect, multifaceted crystal. It was a message. Mateo crouched, his fingers tracing the outline without touching it. It wasn't Cade's work. It was too precise, too elegant. It was a signature. Quartz, I whispered. He knew we were coming, Mateo said, his voice a blade of ice. He let us in. He wanted us to see the IUB. He's been watching us this whole time. He stood, looking not at the pier but out at the dark, open ocean. This wasn't a raid. Lila, it was a greeting. The chalk outline of the crystal haunted the drive back to Philadelphia. That elegant, cold symbol on the seawall had changed everything. We hadn't won. We had been permitted to escape. We were rats in a maze, and Quartz had just tapped the glass. Back in the Vale House, the mood was arctic. Vera had the complete dossier built. It was splashed across the main screen. A terrifying, beautiful mosaic of crime. My grainy photos of Cade, Rook's payroll data, the chemical analysis of the sample from the cold room, the full distribution map from the harvest file, linking the Providence Pier to a dozen unsuspecting towns. It was enough to bury Dorian Cade and his fake 9UB partners for a century. We release it, Rook said, his voice a low growl. We drop the whole file on the Attorney General's desk and let the feds burn Cade to the ground. No. Mateo's voice cut through the room. He was staring at the screen, at the map of towns. We do that, and Quartz activates his real assets, the real IUB agents, the ones bought and paid for, will classify the evidence. The key witnesses the dock workers Cade was paying will vanish. The product will be dumped in the ocean. Cade goes to jail, but Quartz walks. The harvest just finds a new port. He turned from the screen. We don't go for the king. Not yet. We go for his shield. We make Cade toxic. He looked at Vera. The leak, but not the one they expect. I don't want a federal case. I want a public execution. Vera's fingers flew. Channel 7, Providence, their lead investigative reporter, Sarah Jensen. She's ambitious, and she hates the Port Authority. Give her a taste, Mateo ordered, just enough to draw blood. The Harbor and Transit Compliance Authority, the fake agency, the vitamin warehouse at St. Atwood, no names, no links to Aegis, just enough to start a fire. Let the public do the work for us. 2 hours later, Vera had a secure, anonymous line. She looked at me. He needs a source. Lila, a voice. Someone from the inside. No, Mateo said, stepping forward. Yes, I said, meeting his gaze. I thought of Elena. I thought of the list of towns. He's right, it has to be me. People need to hear a voice, not just see a file. The setup was fast. A blacked-out studio in one of Vera's safe houses, a voice modulator that made me sound like a stranger, my words digitized and cold. Sarah Jensen's face was on a monitor, sharp and skeptical. You're claiming a shadow agency is operating at the Providence Pier, she asked. I took a breath. I held Mateo's lesson in my mind, breathed the box. I'm telling you, I said, my modulated voice steady, that I saw men in fake uniforms, using a non-existent agency's name, to move vitamins out of a warehouse. I'm telling you to ask the mayor why. These are serious allegations. Why are you coming forward? What do you want? The question was a spear. It went right to the heart of it. I stopped being Leah the herbalist or Lila the witness. I was just Elena's sister. Whoa, I don't want anything, I said, and the digital distortion couldn't hide the tremor in my voice. I'm doing this because I already saw what fake medicine can do. I don't want another town, another family, to lose a sister like I lost mine. I clicked off the mic. The silence in the room was heavy. The story hit the 6 o'clock news. It was an explosion. By 8, every local station was running with it. By 9, HTCA was trending. By 10, the mayor of Providence, his face pale and sweating, was holding an emergency press conference. He didn't know what was real or fake. He just knew he was on fire. I have ordered a full 72-hour lockdown of the St. Atwood facility and the surrounding pier, he stammered. There will be a full investigation. Vera smiled, a thin, cold expression. The harvest window is closed, at least for the next 3 days. We just suffocated half of Cade's plan. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. We hadn't caught the snake. We just blocked its hole. The next day, it got personal. A burner phone Vera had given me, one I'd never even used, vibrated. A single text, the park at Rittenhouse Square, 3 p.m. Come alone, or your mother's new clinic gets a visit from the health inspector, the one on my payroll. Cade. Mateo was furious. He's bluffing. You're not going. Yes, I am, I said, pulling on my jacket. He's not bluffing about having a man on the inside, but he's desperate. He wouldn't reach out to me unless we heard him. I need to see his face. Rook will have you covered, every angle, Mateo said, his jaw tight. You say one word, one signal, and we pull you out. The park was bright, cold, and full of people. I sat on a bench, feeling completely exposed. Cade sat down next to me, as if we were old friends. He was wearing a jogging suit, smiling, a picture of civic-minded health. Lila, he said, his voice pleasant. You look better than you did at the diner. What do you want, Cade? A simple transaction. He didn't look at me. He watched a child playing with a dog. You have a very active imagination. I appreciate that, but it's causing my partners anxiety. I am here to offer you a way out. Full witness protection, a new name, a new life. He slid a bank envelope onto the bench between us, and $50,000, cash, a signing bonus for your silence. 50,000 pieces of silver, the price of my sister's life and all the others he planned to destroy. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at him. I remembered the snap of the agent's arm. I remembered Mateo's hand on my cheek in the motel. I remembered what it felt like to not be a victim. I stood up. I'm not for sale, Dorian, and as for protection, I gave him the best smile I could muster, my heart pounding so hard I thought he could see it. I already have better protection. I turned my back on him and walked away. I didn't run. I walked, every step in agony, expecting a hand on my shoulder, a needle in my neck, nothing. I reached the street, got in Rook's car, and finally let out the breath I'd been holding. When we got back to the Vale house, Mateo was waiting. He wasn't in the war room. He was in his office. A phone was on his desk, on speaker. A sound filled the room, a distorted, digital rasp. It was a voice, but it was not human. It was cold, synthesized, and full of a chilling, amused arrogance. "No, a bold move, Mateo," the voice rasped. "You used the Waitress. You sicked the public on my associate. You cost me a great deal of money. I admire the play." Mateo's hands were clenched on his desk. "Quartz, I see you found my calling card in Providence. A small gift." The voice paused. "You seem to think you're a savior. You like to protect the broken things you find. You want to save the people from the harvest." Another pause, this one full of malice. "Save her from me first." The line clicked dead. "Vera," Mateo roared. Vera was already on it. The call was masked, bounced off a dozen satellites, but the initial uplink packet, the audio compression left a trace, a signature. Got it. A map flashed on the main screen, a single, pulsing red dot. It's not local. He's not here. The dot was hovering over the Hudson River. The Washington Bridge, Vera said, New York City. "He's moving the entire operation," Mateo said, at his face a mask of cold fury. "He's abandoning Providence. He's forcing our hand. Get the team ready. We're going to New York." "Mateo," Rook said, stepping into the doorway. His face was grim. "We have a problem, a bigger one." "What?" "The routes I planned for your extraction from Providence. I set 3. You and Lila took the third one. The storm drain. Someone accessed the other 2. Someone pinged the rendezvous points from inside our network, 5 minutes before you even got to the pier." The air went out of the room. "It's an inside job," Rook stated. "We have a traitor. Someone is leaking your itinerary. Cade didn't find Lila by magic. He was told exactly where to look." Mateo's eyes closed for a single, pained second. He looked betrayed, but when he opened them, his gaze was ice. "Then we changed the plan. We split. Rook, you take a team on the public route, a decoy. Vera, you and I and Lila will take the private tunnel. No one knows our real route." My mind was racing. A leak. Someone inside. How did Cade know? How did Quartz know he knew I was the Waitress? He knew Mateo had me. It had to go back to the beginning, to the diner. The fake agents came in. I ran. I got in Mateo's car. How did Cade know which Waitress? How did he know my name? "The camera?" I said, the words catching in my throat. Mateo turned to me. "What camera?" "At the harbor light, my boss, Mikhail. He had a security camera over the register. It covered the whole diner." My mind was piecing it together. The day after I ran, I called my friend who works the day shift. I asked her if the cops had been in. She said no, but something weird happened. She said Mikhail came in early and took the camera down, said it was broken. He was replacing the whole system. "Mikhail," Vera said, her fingers flying, "owner of the Harbor Light Diner, his financials." "Oh." "What?" I asked. "He gets a monthly charitable donation," Vera said, her voice disgusted, "from the Aegis Philanthropy Benevolent Fund for supporting community health initiatives. He wasn't a boss. He was a paid informant. He'd sold me to Cade from the first second. He gave them my name, my file, my mother's address. He was the leak." Before Mateo could even give the order, an alert flashed on Vera's screen. It was a live news feed from New York City. "Mateo," she said, her voice urgent. "Look, Quartz isn't just moving. He's accelerating." The screen showed a bright, happy scene. Banners were being unfurled along the piers in Manhattan. Welcome to the Hudson Night Fest. They're setting up free wellness tents all along the pier, Vera said. Sponsored by Aegis Philanthropy, it's the harvest. Matteo, he's not waiting. He's using the festival as his grand opening. He's going to poison the whole city. The Hudson Night Fest was a living, breathing monster. Tens of thousands of people crushed onto the Manhattan piers, a pulsing sea of bodies. Bright with neon glow sticks and the flash of cell phones, the air smelled of popcorn, spun sugar, and the cold, metallic brine of the river. Overhead, fireworks were staged on barges, waiting for the signal to ignite. It was a celebration of the city. And set up all along the boardwalk, like pristine white chapels, were the Aegis Philanthropy free wellness tents. They were already doing a brisk business, handing out free samples, wellness checks, and bright blue pamphlets. This was the harvest, and we were in the middle of it. "Lila, can you hear me?" Vera's voice was a needle-sharp spike in my ear. "The microscanners Rook's team planted are active. The vitamin packets they're handing out are hot. The concentration is not what they tested in Providence. It's 90% pure. This isn't a long-term plan to create dependency. This is a mass casualty event." My blood turned to ice. He wasn't just hooking them. He was culling them. I adjusted the collar of the light blue scrubs. My hair was pulled back under a volunteer nurse's cap. I was Nurse Lila, here to help. My real mission was the main Aegis supply van, parked in a restricted zone near the stage. I had to get to their central distribution laptop. I had to plant Vera's kill switch virus. I moved through the crowd, every smiling face, every child laughing on their father's shoulders was a potential victim. This was so much bigger than my sister. This was a war. "I see you," Matteo's voice murmured, a separate channel, a private line. "Stay on the east side of the main tent. I'm 40 feet back, near the pretzel vendor." I didn't look. I didn't have to. I could feel his gaze, a physical presence, a lifeline in the overwhelming sea of people. "If you feel it rising, you find my eyes, I will come." His promise was the only armor I had. I was 10 feet from the van when a new voice cut through the air. It was not the festival's MC. It was a cold, synthesized rasp, broadcast from a mobile speaker. "Matteo Vale." The crowd murmured, confused. The voice was everywhere. I turned. There he was. He was standing on a small stack of shipping pallets, as if it were a throne. He wore a transparent rain slicker, the kind you buy for $1 over an expensive suit. On his head was an old-fashioned boater hat. He was holding a small, battery-powered PA system. It was quartz. His eyes, visible even from this distance, were a flat, dead gray, the color of slate, the color of the seawall in Providence. "I'm tired of your interference, Matteo," the digital voice crackled. "You've been a pest, but now you're a problem. I'm a fan of efficiency, so let's make a trade." He gestured, and 2 men in pristine ANUB tactical gear, not the fakes from Philly. These were hard. Professional killers stepped forward. They were holding Dorian Cade between them. Cade was gagged, his face bruised. He was a disposable asset. "I offer you this," Quartz continued, "in exchange for the girl and the data she's carrying in her hair." My hand instinctively went to the crystal clip. He knew. "You have 2 minutes, Mr. Vale," Quartz said. He held up a document, after which these legitimate federal officers will execute this warrant for your arrest: conspiracy, racketeering, interfering with a federal investigation. You will be buried under the law while I simply vanish. The trade is simple. Her life for yours. My earpiece screeched. "It's a fake!" Vera's voice was frantic. "It's a brilliant forgery. But the font encoding on the authorization line, it's a custom variant. He's trying to trap you. Matteo, it's a lie." "Lila." Vera's voice switched channels. "The traitor, we were wrong. It wasn't just Mikhail. He was a low-level informant. The real leak is with you. We vetted a team of new security and medical personnel. One of them, Mara, the nurse with the red hair. She's Quartz's asset. She's right behind you. I froze. Mara, the pleasant-faced nurse who had been assigned to my team, was right there. She was holding a sample box. "Lila, your signal is choppy," Mara said, stepping close, her smile all professional concern. "Let me check the transmitter pack on your belt." She reached for my waist, but her eyes weren't on my belt. They were on my button camera. And in her other hand, hidden by the sample box, was a syringe, not with vitamins, with air, an embolism. "Get away from her!" Lila, Vera screamed. But a shadow moved faster. Rook? He had been my shadow all along, not Mateo. He materialized from the crowd, a ghost in a sanitation worker's uniform. He didn't make a sound. He grabbed Mara's wrist, the one with the syringe. Her eyes went wide. His other hand chopped down on the side of her neck. She crumpled, unconscious, before she could even drop the box. Rook caught it, blended back into the crowd, and was gone. It took 3 seconds. With his asset neutralized, Mateo moved. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He walked out of the crowd, up the steps to the main festival stage, and took the microphone from the stunned MC. His real voice, deep and clear and amplified, boomed across the entire festival. "Good evening, everyone. My apologies for the interruption. We have a public health emergency." The crowd went silent. Quartz stared, his smile faltering. This was not in his plan. Mateo looked directly at Quartz. He was not speaking to the crowd. He was negotiating, in public, with tens of thousands of witnesses. "Quartz?" Mateo's voice echoed off the buildings. "This is over. Release the people. Return your poison to the warehouse. You will not touch the civilians. This is between you and me." It was a direct challenge, a declaration of war in the middle of a party. Quartz stared at Mateo. The synthesized voice was gone. He dropped the PA system, and then he smiled, a real, genuine smile of pure, venomous delight. This was the game he had wanted. He slowly raised his left hand and made a simple, elegant gesture, a signal. Vera screamed in my ear, "Sniper the fireworks, it's a cover, Leela, Mo." The sky exploded. It was not one firework, it was the grand finale, unleashed all at once, a deafening, percussive, boom, 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 scream that shook the pier. The sound was a physical blow, vibrating in my teeth, in my bones. The crowd roared, looking up, their faces lit by blooms of red and green and gold. I stood frozen, looking for the shot, looking for the sniper. I never saw him, I just saw Mateo. He was moving. He wasn't walking, he was sprinting. His face a mask of raw, primal terror. He launched himself off the stage, clearing the 10 yards between us not as a man, but as a projectile. He didn't push me. He hit me. His shoulder connected with my chest, a full-body tackle that drove the air from my lungs. We flew backward, crashing to the wooden boardwalk in a tangle of limbs. The sound was lost in the roar of another firework, but I felt it, a heavy, sickening thud. It wasn't the sound of me hitting the ground. It was the sound of the bullet hitting him. We were on the ground. The crowd was screaming at the sky, oblivious. No one had seen. He was on top of me, his full weight a deadening press, pinning me to the wood. His face was inches from mine, his eyes wide, wild. He was staring at me, his gaze frantic, searching my face. There was pain. Yes, but beneath it was a terrifying, bottomless fear. The fear I had seen in his eyes when he spoke of the girl in Detroit. He tried to speak, a low groan. He was fighting for air. His lips moved, forming 2 words I couldn't hear, but I could read. "Don't leave." My hands flew to his back, fumbling, searching for the wound, for the blood. I felt it. Under his jacket, a hard plate, the Kevlar vest, there was a star-shaped crack in the ceramic, a small, deep crater. It had held. "Shot came from the west," Rook's voice. Back on comms was pure ice. "High angle. Got it, the museum barge. I'm moving." Mateo was still staring at me. His breath coming in ragged gasps from the force of the impact. The sniper was still out there, and he was reloading. The world was a symphony of explosions. The fireworks above, the gunshot below. Matteo rolled off me, the impact of the bullet having stolen his breath. I saw his face, tight with pain, but his eyes were clear. He was already analyzing. The vest held, I gasped, my hand flat against the spiderweb crack in the ceramic plate under his shirt. "Rook!" Matteo growled, ignoring me, speaking into his wrist. "The barge. Now." He was on his feet, pulling me into the shadow of a giant speaker stack. The chaos was our cover. "Lila," Vera's voice was tin in my ear, strained with panic. "Quartz has activated the final protocol, the main distribution. He's bypassed the local tents. 180 seconds, and every aerosol mister on this pier goes live." I saw them, the decorative silver boxes I'd thought were part of the light show. They weren't. They were weapons. "Vera, I'm moving to the main stage console," I said, my voice sharp. I wasn't asking permission. "Lock onto my signal. I'm giving you the PA system." While Matteo and Rook, a parallel war I could only imagine, were scaling a cargo net, crossing a dark stretch of water to reach the museum barge. I was fighting my own battle. I slid behind the soundboard, slamming my datapad onto the console. "I'm in," I yelled. "Give me the override." "Broadcasting," Vera's voice said. A sound cut through the air, louder and more terrifying than the fireworks, a high-pitched emergency warning tone. Then Vera's voice, amplified to a deafening roar, blanketed the pier. "Attention! This is a public health alert. The Aegis Wellness products contain a dangerous, highly toxic substance. Do not accept the samples. I repeat, do not accept the samples. Move away from the wellness tents." The crowd froze. The music died. The party stopped. I could hear, faintly, the sniper firing again. Thwip, thwip, but the shots were wild. Rook and Matteo were on him. And then a hand grabbed my arm, yanking me back, a cold circle of steel pressed against my temple. "You should have stayed a waitress," Dorian Cade snarled in my ear. He was bruised, gagged, but somehow free. He'd ripped the gag off. "Stop the broadcast, you bitch, or I swear to God I'll end you right here." The panic was instant. A cold flood. My vision narrowed to the barrel of the gun. Breathe the box. Lila. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. "It's over, Dorian." I stalled, my voice shaking, but my brain working. "They know. Everyone knows." "Shut up," he hissed, dragging me toward the pier's edge, using me as a human shield. "He'll get me out of this. Quartz will—" "He's poisoning them. Dorian," I screamed, the words ripping out of me. "He's not curing anyone. It's just poison. He's doing the same thing they did to my sister." He faltered. For 1/2 of a second, the hand holding the gun wavered. My words, my story, had hit some last, buried nerve. It was all the time Matteo needed. He didn't come from the barge. He dropped from the sky, landing on the pier from a cable he'd used to swing back, a dark angel returning. He landed in a crouch, his gun up. "Let her go, Cade." "Stay back!" "Vale," a new voice shrieked. Quartz. He was standing in the center of the pier, next to the largest mister, the central node. He was holding a black device with a single red button. A laser dot shot out, painting the side of the pressurized tank. "Though this whole pier is wired, Matteo," Quartz laughed, his real voice thin and reedy without the distortion. "You stop the packets, but you can't stop the air I press this, and the harvest goes airborne. Everyone on this pier gets a lungful." He was a spider in the center of his web. Cade had me. Quartz had everyone. I looked at the machine. The laser was on the tank, but the trigger was the box in his hand, the tank itself. It was industrial, pressurized. I knew this. From the diner, the high-pressure espresso machine, Mikhail's constant lectures. The emergency kill switch, Moreno, it's always mechanical, it's always yellow, it cuts the compression. I saw it on the side of the massive tank, half hidden by a tangle of pipes, a yellow, looped handle. Quartz was savoring his monologue. Cade was distracted, looking between Mateo and the crowd. I didn't think. I reacted, I stomped my heel hard onto Cade's designer loafer, grinding my heel into his instep. He roared in pain, his grip loosened, the gun wavering for a single, critical second. I didn't run away from him. I dove past him. I lunged for the yellow handle, grabbing it with both hands. No, Quartz screamed, seeing me. I pulled. It was heavy, but it moved. A deafening, mechanical hiss erupted from the tank as the pressure vented, harmlessly, into the air. Quartz slammed his thumb down on the red button. Click. Nothing. A pathetic of mist, and then silence. The machine was dead. Quartz was fast. He saw his plan collapse. He abandoned the mister and lunged at me, grabbing a fistful of my hair. Yanking me off my feet, he pressed his own pistol to my head. "You clever, stupid bitch!" he shrieked, his composure gone. "Let her go, Quartz," Mateo said. He was closer now. His gun was steady. "Drop your weapon, Vale!" Quartz screamed, dragging me backward. "The mission or the girl? Your choice. Your one magnificent failure. Drop it." Mateo looked at him. Then his eyes found mine. The fear was gone. The panic was gone. There was only that stillness, that absolute, terrifying calm. I saw the promise he'd made in the motel room. "I will come." I gave him a single, almost invisible nod. I am not Anya. I am not a ghost. Slowly, Mateo Vale lowered his gun. He placed it carefully on the boardwalk. He kicked it away. He raised his hands. "Okay," he said, taking a step forward. "You win. Me. Take me. Let her go." Quartz's face split in a grin of pure, triumphant evil. He had won. He had broken the untouchable Mateo Vale. "Now, Vera," Mateo said, his voice calm. Every screen on the pier, every jumbotron, every monitor in every vendor stall flashed to life. It was not the festival logo, it was Vera's dossier. It was Cade's face next to the IEB captains. It was the offshore bank accounts. It was the chemical analysis of the poison. It was the harvest map, showing the towns, their towns, all scheduled for wellness fairs. The complete unredacted evidence file, Vera's cold, amplified voice announced, is now live. It has been delivered to the district attorney's office and to Channel 7 News. A QR code is now being broadcast for the public to download the file. The crowd was a single, stunned entity. Then it became a mob. The murmur of confusion became a roar of betrayal. "They're poisoning us," a man yelled. Aegis volunteers began tearing off their blue vests, throwing them to the ground in disgust. Quartz stared at the screens, his face ashen. He had lost. Through the chaos, a new line of uniforms appeared. Not IEB, not fakes, NYPD. They parted the crowd, led by a captain, a woman with a tired, honest face. Her badge read J. Wren. She took in the scene, Quartz holding me, Cade scrambling for his dropped gun, Mateo, hands raised, gunless. Captain Wren looked directly at Mateo. She unhooked a pair of handcuffs from her belt in one smooth motion. She slid them across the boardwalk. They spun, clattering, and came to a stop right at Mateo's feet. She gave him a single, sharp nod. "Clean your house?" It was a cascade. Mateo kicked the handcuffs. They spun, hitting Quartz's shins. As Quartz flinched in surprise, Mateo dropped, his hand snatching the gun he'd discarded. He didn't aim. He fired from the ground. The shot was a metallic pang. It hit Quartz's pistol, ripping it from his hand, sending it spinning into the black water of the Hudson. Quartz shrieked, clutching his bleeding, shattered hand. Rook was suddenly there, a wall of muscle, blocking his path. Cade, seeing it all end, turned to run. He ran right into me. He raised his own gun, fumbling. I didn't wait. I moved, my hand striking, knuckles out, connecting hard with the V-shaped scar below his ear, the nerve cluster. His eyes rolled back. The gun fell from his limp fingers. He collapsed at my feet. The live news cameras swarmed us, their lights blinding. I was shaking, the adrenaline finally crashing. Matteo was at my side, his hands on my shoulders, his eyes scanning me, checking for wounds. He started to pull me against his chest, to shield me from the cameras. But he stopped. He saw my face. I was standing tall. I wasn't his victim. I was the one who had taken Cade down. He lowered his hands, resting one, lightly, on the small of my back, a gesture of support, not of possession. The cameras captured it all, the Mafia Boss and the Waitress, standing together, equals. It was over. The DA announced the indictments. Aegis was dissolved. The real INB, humiliated, began a public and brutal internal purge. Weeks later, we were back. The Harbor Light Diner. 3 a.m. It was closed, dark, just the sound of a light rain tapping on the glass. I held the greasy, stained, holy relic, the delivery manifest, QA 774. Matteo held a simple, dark wood frame. I slid the paper in. He hung it on the wall behind the counter. The first trophy of our new life. What now, Matteo? I asked the silence. Now we build, he said, his voice quiet. He was looking at the rain. Vale Logistics is going legitimate, fully transparent, but it needs a head of safety and integrity, someone who knows how the poison gets in, someone who knows what to look for. I smiled. Me? You, he confirmed, and me. I'm done with gray markets that create ghosts. I'm out of that business. For good. We sat in booth 4, the vinyl squeaking. The silence was easy. I leaned my head on his shoulder. His arm came around me, pulling me close. Our hands found each other on the tabletop, fingers lacing together. So, I murmured, all this, and you still have no idea how to make a normal meal. I felt his chest rumble with a low, real laugh. If a normal day ever comes, he whispered, his lips against my hair, I'll learn to cook breakfast. The next morning, dawn was breaking over the Delaware River. The sky was a watercolor of iron gray and pale, fragile pink. Matteo's black sedan was parked in front of the diner. I locked the door, the key turning with a final, heavy click. I walked to the car. I paused, just for a second, looking at the passenger side. Then I walked around to the driver's side. I opened the door. I slid in. Matteo was in the passenger seat, watching me, a slow, genuine smile, one I had never seen before, spread across his face. Drive, partner, he said. I put the car in gear, and we rolled forward, into the new day. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please drop a comment below. Share your thoughts, and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider supporting us by hitting that hype button to help this story reach more listeners.